Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliet Clark, and we have another fantastic training for authors today. Sheila Kennedy, I will introduce her in a moment and let her take the reins. But before we get started, I want to remind you all that next month, our monthly training will be 90 minutes. And it's platform planning. There are forms. I'm going to go through a lot of things. We're going to go through a workbook. And then I'm giving you some forms so you can understand how to break your platform down into bite-sized pieces. Because how many, raise your hands, get really overwhelmed when I tell you to do things? Yeah, I know, all of you. So we're gonna figure out what you need to do and how to break it down into bite-sized pieces so you actually get it done. So if you're interested, go over to platformplanning.com and register, and you can get all the materials. And I'll repeat this at the end since there are still people coming through, but hopefully it'll be a really beneficial training for everybody. And I'm super excited to share it all with you because it is literally the way I work this time of year to make sure that my goals for 2025 can be reached. So I think it'll be beneficial for all of you. So today's trainer is Sheila Kennedy, and she is the editor and publisher of Zebra Ink magazine and has spent over a decade immersed in the world in publishing. She's a two-time solo author and co-author of the best-selling memoir of Justice Joseph D. Valentine, retired, and the publisher of 21 other authored books. Sheila has not only mastered the technicalities of the industry, but she's also championed the emotional depth that storytelling demands. She understands passion, vulnerability, resilience, creativity, and the emotional currency that fuels the author's journey from conception to publication. And if you've ever read her magazine, you know that's true because it's a storytelling magazine. It's not like the magazine that we have. Through her mentorship and coaching, Sheila has guided countless aspiring authors, helping them to draw upon this emotional wealth to craft stories that deeply resonate with readers. She created the Z List, which I hope all of you guys will sign up for when she talks about it at the end today. Is a directory of independent authors, publishing service providers, and independent bookstores. That's the part all of you, if you are already published, should be really excited about. She also showcases the bravery, brilliance, and boldness of the indie author community. So, Sheila, take it away.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And we are going to have quick and easy information today. When I first started in the publishing arena, when I was doing my first solo book in 2013, somebody had said to me, Sheila, you need to have a press kit. And I was like, you're ridiculous. I am not going to be that important. I do not need a press kit. The press is not going to be calling me and saying I need a quote or whatever. She's like, trust me, you need to have it. I was like, no, I really don't. But anyway, she persisted. And so we put one together, and it is the most used tool I have. And so I can't recommend to everyone enough that they should have one. If you don't have one, I'm going to show you how to put it together today. And part of the motivation because I feel so strongly about authors having one, is that I created the Z List so that they have a press kit that is already built. They don't have to do anything different, but fill out their profile. So everything that we have in the Z List is in a press kit and can be used as such. So we're going to cover all of that today. One of the things, as I'm trying to get through this, is to tell you that there's a difference between a press kit and a media kit. And that's something that a lot of people don't quite understand. And the reason that I am making that distinction is so that you know the difference. Today, we're talking about press kits, which is about you and your individual press or facts, marketing collateral, things like that. A media kit is something that I have for like the magazine, right? And so that includes who your demographic is, what your topics are, all of those kinds of things. And so that's really important because it has your social media numbers and things like that, because you're going to present a media kit to people who want to advertise for you or with you, who may want to be writing for you, those kinds of things. So there's a difference between a press kit and a media kit. Some people use them interchangeably. They're actually different in my mind. They may not be in everybody's mind, but I'm just, want you to be aware of the difference or what I'm actually talking about. So we're not talking about media kits today. We're talking about press kit. And that essentially is for you to be getting more press, if that makes sense. Today, we're going to talk about positioning first. And you can use your press kit to position yourself. And positioning, if you are one of a million people who are doing the same thing, how do you stand out? And typically how you stand out is how you encounter your expertise. A lot of us are experts in the same field, right? But we all bring something different to the field. All of our businesses are going to be different. How do you set that up? That is going to be your positioning statement for your press kit. If you haven't done that work about how to differentiate yourself, that's going to be super important. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, when you're talking about positioning, we want to avoid words like I'm amazing, I'm the best, things that are subjective. We want concrete things, right? Because everybody can say they're the best or they're the only. Y'all are not the only, I promise you. And I hate to say that, but it's so true. There's only so many universal truths in the world, right? And what is unique to us is how we encounter those universal truths, what we write our books about, what we do our business for. Okay, those skills are not necessarily unique. How we create them or put them out into the world may be unique. Okay, so that's something really important to think about. So when you are talking about it, like my business used to be the confidence coach, right? And so there's a million people who are teaching confidence. There are a million confidence coaches out there. So what did I do? I was the confidence coach. Why? Not because I'm cocky, not because, I'm arrogant. It's because I knew that I was doing something different I had other skills to bring to the table than other people did. So I wasn't worried about confidence necessarily in yourself. It was in your messaging. It was in your branding. It was in the outcomes that you provide, things like that. So it was a difference, right? And so that's what I'm looking at you or asking you to think about, those kinds of things. What is it that you bring that's different to the marketplace? And that's what you put in your press kit. Okay. That's going to be important when you're doing your bios. Now, the second thing is that I want to talk about what goes into a press kit, right? And so what goes into a press kit? So you're going to have a bio. Well, first you're going to start with your headshot, then your contact information, then your social media handles, then your bio. Now you're going to have a short bio. I used to have people do long bios and short bios and speaker bios. I now ask them to do short bios and speaker bios. Why a speaker bio? Well, because when you are trying to be introduced to something like today, that was way too long. Juliet was reading my short bio, not my speaker bio, right? Because that's it's long. And what happens is we need to just grab a couple of sentences that indicate, the main points. You don't have to give your entire life, history or your business history. Hit the highlights, and kind of try and find something that is going to be interesting to the people, like that is going to be like, oh, I need to listen to her. Not necessarily something that you are going to be talking to them for the next however long. So you don't have to, hit all of those, but they're going to see your expertise in your presentation. They don't necessarily have to hear about it in your speaker bio. And the other part of that is that when you read a bio, a regular, bio, we read differently than we speak. And if you are not speaking it out loud, it sounds fine. Usually our bios are rather stiff and they don't roll off the tongue. And we want it to be easy to introduce you. So that's why I asked for 2, because most of the time your press kit is going to be used when you are sending it to meeting planners, event planners, but also to press who are going to interview on podcasts, are going to interview on TV, are going to, and we need something short and sweet that they can very effectively communicate about you. Okay, so you're going to have a speaker bio and you're going to have a short bio. Then we are going to have, if you've written a book about your business, whatever that may be, you can have your book profile, you can have your book covers, you can do a description, put the description in there. You can put where you can find it to buy it if you want to. Sometimes, I go back and forth with that. Sometimes I think it's tacky because why would you want to do that? But then at the same time, I'm like, well, if they're going to go find out if it's for real, if it's really published, if they want to read the, reviews and things like that, then it makes it easier. So, okay, fine. So you can do that. Then you're going to have interview questions. Now, when you're talking about your interview questions, here's the thing is that I want you to use your sound bites. How many of you have ever put together sound bites for your business or your book? Okay, great. If you haven't, so the history of sound bites is that they were headlines, right? They were easily repeatable phrases that piqued curiosity and could easily, like I said, it's repeatable, so they can easily be shared with other people, right? And so most of us have these value statements and mission statements and all of these things. And that's amazing. And I'm not saying not to have those, but at the same time, if you want people to be an external sales force for you, you have to give them material that is easily repeatable and memorable, right? So that they're going to remember it. I want you to be seen, heard, and hired, right? Easy to remember. Sheila's that girl, okay, who does that, right? So those are the things that you want to turn into your questions. An easy exercise to do that is to list 5, we'll say 5 qualities that you want to be remembered for, you want to be associated with when people are talking about you. So what are those 5 things? I mean, we could go ahead and go through this. It could take a few minutes, but up to you. Then turn those into sentences. Then from those sentences, you whittle it down to about a 10-word phrase or less. Less is better. 5, 6, 7 words is usually max. But if you do 10 words, no more than that. And again, these are going to be things that are kind of repeatable, kind of rolling off the tongue, very interesting, kind of things. Then you're going to turn those into questions. And those are going to be the start of your interview questions. You're going to provide 10 interview questions because some people they don't know what to ask and they're not going to read your book. And so we want them to have as much good information as possible. And of course, you are going to have really good answers for all of those things that you are going to know and you are going to have practiced so that you can, sound as professional as possible. So the goal of the next part of your press kit is going to be your media appearances and what publications you've been published in. And that's going to be super important because when you are approaching press, especially, they're going to want to know you can handle an interview. So if you haven't yet, you want to get on at least one podcast or get some kind of radio or TV interview going because they want to see that you can handle an interview, that there's not going to be dead air, that you're going to have things to talk about and that you're going to be interesting, right? Because we've all listened to those podcasts and interviews when the people are like, yeah, it was great. Loved it. Okay, well, that's not helping anybody, right? That's not endearing people to you. So your media is going to be really important. So to have those links, to podcasts that you've been on, to trainings you've done, those kinds of things. If you have a sizzle reel, put that on there. If you have, anything like that, that's going to be really helpful to put up there. Again, publications. They want to know that you can write outside of what your book is, right? They want to know that you are a decent communicator. They want to see what publications, what your industry is, who you're influencing. So those are important as well. And if you don't have those kinds of things, that's why we have publications like the Zebra Ink, because you get to tell that story. You get to be part of that story, and they get to see that you've been published in other places, right? And again, it's not necessarily when you're doing these interviews that people have to be there live. That link is going to be more beneficial to you than the audience is live, okay? Because that lives on. So you're going to put your media appearances, your publications, then you are going, if you've won awards, I'm not big on putting testimonials in there, only because I don't know that that's going to sway anybody. People fight me about that, and that's cool. If you want to put your public or your testimonials in there, that's awesome. I'm not going to say not to, but however you want to work that. But if you won awards and things like that, there's definitely room there for that. And then we wrap it up with fun facts. Now, why would we want to put fun facts in? The reason why we put fun facts in is because sometimes interviewers aren't always adept at pulling out good information to ask. And they run through your first 10 questions rather quickly, and they don't have anything else to say, but they still have 10 minutes to finish, or they have, dead time. And so if you have those, then they can at least ask some questions about those things, right? Now, when you're compiling your fun facts, they should be items that are separate, but will point back to what your sound bites would be, right? So I'm a champion for indie authors. Okay, cool. Great. So one of my fun facts would be, I was a Division I cheerleader in college. And I started cheerleading when I was 5 years old, or even fifth grade. And I was a cheerleader until I was today, because that's exactly what I do for my clients today. I am their biggest cheerleader. And so what started as a fun extracurricular when I was a kid, I now do for a living. So those kinds of things go back to, and one of my other ones is that I lived in 19 different houses in 25 years. So I'm really good at resilience. I'm really good at adapting to change because I've had to do that. And so I get to take authors from being people who are kind of in their own little world and helping them change to be somebody who influences a bigger world, right? And so I help them with that resilience. I help them build up that resilience so that they can adapt to changes that are coming their way after they publish their book. You see how that kind of works, right? They were interesting little facts about me, but they always pointed back to what my platform is all about. Okay, anybody have any questions? I'm talking really fast. Linda.
You mentioned the interview questions, the sound bites. Can you give us an example of a sound bite and a sentence that becomes a question?
Sure. Okay, so let's say one of my sound bites is, I want you to be seen, heard, and hired. I would turn that into a question as, why is it important for authors to be seen, heard, and hired? Right? So I would kind of flip that around. Or I could say something like, okay, if you're the champion, why do authors need a champion? And then I can get into, well, it's hard because usually doing all of the things all by themselves, right? For self-published authors anyway. So they're handling the marketing, they're doing the writing, they're doing the marketing, they're doing the promoting, they're doing the relationship building, they're doing all those things. So I can talk about all of those things. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Does that?
It helps.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Sure, my pleasure. Anybody else have a question?
I do actually. So when you're in the media and you've had a great interview, is that something you want to include? Because as a podcast host, I always try, because I got burned once really bad. I always try to go over and see if people have a reel or something I can look at. Because I actually ended up with a 23-year-old YouTube expert who was literally like my son's age. And I was pulling teeth trying to get answers out of. So is that something you would recommend so that people can see that you will be a good guest?
100%. That's why we include, if you have a YouTube channel, if you have a TikTok channel, your socials are on there. So if you don't have podcast or interview experience, then you will want to share that because they're going to want to know what they are getting into, right? Because that is really important. What we do for our own socials is not always going to be indicative of how we handle an interview, because some people just freeze, right? Like as in Juliet's experience. So if you haven't, one of the best ways for you to get promotion and publicity for whatever it is that you're doing is the use of, I'm going to say it, traditional media. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because for the last 12 years, we have been so social media focused that because of that, it has become what traditional media used to be, right? We can't most of us are just shouting into the wind on socials. And I'm not saying it's not important to have it. And I'm not saying not to have a presence and not to be consistent in all of the things. It's a tool, but utilizing and harnessing the power of traditional media, I can give one interview and I can reach 1 million people, potentially, if they all are watching that radio show or that TV show or that podcast, right? So the power of me to promote is so much bigger on a traditional, and I'm going to include podcasting on there because that's kind of taken the same track as radio, right? Because of that, if you have not yet been on a podcast, been on a radio show, been on a television slot, that's a primary source for you to get promotion. Definitely be a part of the strategy when you're using your press kit. Juliet.
Yeah, I just want to draw a line in the sand with these. So if you're going to be on a traditional channel, let's see, an ABC, an NBC, that's soundbite time because you don't want to get on and just talk about your book. That's not what you're there for. It's usually short sentences. If you are on podcast or radio, I call them alternative media now because they're a different format. They're long form media. So Linda Marcenico has a show starting, the A Train to Sedona, in October. She's going to be doing long form because it's a radio show. So I just want to put the difference out because when you interview for or pitch for TV, you're going to be doing sound bites. When you pitch for radio and podcast, it's more long form now. So I think that's where your video really comes in with the get to know you part. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And I also think that, and this is a hard pill for a lot of authors to swallow. And I realize that not all of us here are authors or have any aspiration to be, that we just work with them. But the story that you're going to pitch is never that you have a new book out. That is not newsworthy. That is only important to you. And I don't mean that with any disrespect. I'm an author myself, okay? So but you have to create a story that your book fits into that is also newsworthy. But you having a new book out, unless you're like James Patterson maybe, or, Liz, most of us are not newsworthy. Okay. So you have to create a storyline or pitch a story that is something interesting. So you pull from current events, things like that, and how does your book fit into that? And how do you maybe you had a meaningful experience that you've written about in your book that actually has to do with, whatever the current event is. Maybe you're talking about a trip that you went to the Ukraine a few years ago before the war. And now you want to talk about how devastating it is that and that's a story. That's something that people would want to hear about. Okay. So when you are using your press kit, so I guess that's going to be the next thing is how do you use the press kit, right? So first of all, where do you house it? Some people will put all of this information together and they will put it in a PDF and they will send it as an attachment when they are pitching a story, right? And it's no different when you're pitching a story to someplace. It's no different than you putting in a speaker request or, request to speak for an event that's happening, right? So it's that same kind of process. And you're always, whether you're speaking, whether you're doing interviews, whatever, pitching, whatever, you're going to include your press kit link. Right? You are going to include that with the information so that they can read all about you. They know about who you are. You can do it as a standalone with your branding and the whole thing, press kit as a PDF attachment. Not my favorite. And the reason is that a lot of people don't bother to open the attachments, right? They just don't. And sometimes they don't get through some, especially if you're doing press and sending it to media outlets, they just don't open them. I hesitate to tell you to do it that way. It's an option. Sometimes it's the only option. When I did a book for Justice Valentino, he had no desire whatsoever to have a website, had no desire whatsoever to be doing all of those things. He just wanted to write a book about the funny things that he did when he was on the bench. But he needed a press kit. And so I did create one and then I housed it on my website because I wrote the book with him. I didn't feel bad about putting it on my website. And that's what I'm going to say to you is that I encourage you to use it as a back page of your website. It does not have to be a public facing page. It doesn't have to be in your menu. But if you have it on your web page or, as a back end web page, all of your branding is there. All of your menu tab is there. All they have to do is click to see your testimonials, to read your blog, to do your thing. Okay, they don't have to go anywhere else. And you're sending out a URL. And they are much more likely to click on a URL that's going to take them to a web page and read all about it. So that's where and a lot of people get confused when I say it needs to be a back end page. If you are creating your website, you're going to create a new page and you are going to publish that page, but it is not going to be in your menu. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about back-end pages.
I'm just going to interject here because we have several clients that have books and we have 2 different press kits too. So I just want to bring this to your attention. As much, you guys probably know, there's a very divided media environment today. There is a left media and there's a right media, and there just seems to be nobody in the middle. We had a feminist book, and this is something I want you guys to take to heart. Hold your nose and watch the other media, whether you want to or not, because it makes no sense for you to knock half of society out of reading your book. So here's the example. We had a book on feminism. She wanted desperately to be put on liberal media because she felt that's where the feminism was. Every time liberal media was pushed, nobody knew her. Nobody knew her. They took the Maureen Dowds of the world. Everybody knows who Maureen Dowd is. They took those people who are icons in that area. What was interesting about it is we had a separate press kit for the more conservative. The more conservatives were the ones that stepped up. Fox wanted to interview her. Newsmax wanted to interview her. And she was absolutely like, no, I can't stand those networks. Yet those were the ones that wanted to book her. So I'm going to tell you this as someone who cares about your book selling, hold your nose and do the work. You might actually learn something watching another side of the aisle, but that's what you have to do. And we actually created 2 different press kits in that situation so that when we pitched, we had more to get in the door, because you have to prove that what you're doing is relevant when you pitch, right, Sheila? Yeah,
Absolutely.
It has to be relevant. So that might be something you consider as well. Like, do you need a separate press kit if you're going to be pitching different things?
And I would beg to say that the difference, if you don't want to do 2 press kits, you can do the same press kit, but your pitch is going to be very different, right? And so I'm so that email is going to be worded very differently than to, the right and left kind of thing. Okay. So again, I think that your basic information isn't going to change. And that's what you're putting out in your quote unquote press kit. The pitch is going to be different. Right. So I do see where, you would want to alter or shift some of your languaging in your press kit and that kind of a thing, depending on where you're sending it. So 2 might be beneficial to you, but if you don't have any, start with 1. And, and the other thing is like, this isn't about pitching, but I will say controversy is the best marketing you can do, right? Like, and if you are strong enough to be on the side of a controversial marketing campaign, and I say that with respect, like not everybody is up for being able to be the center of controversy, right? Because sometimes people just want people to feel just like you do. You want to convince them that if you're okay with people having their own opinions, then it's okay. Like embrace the controversy because people are going to be talking about you and they're going to be wanting to read your book. They're going to want to see what's behind all of this, right? So that's a fabulous marketing move if you have I'll say guts to do it, because it's not for everybody. So I'm not saying that everybody should do that, but I am saying like that is one of the best things you could do.
Somebody told me last month after we had the training, he said he wanted to do something controversial. He wanted to be canceled and trolled because then he would sell books. And I was appalled. I was like, I would never want to be canceled and trolled.
And I think you have to remember the reason why we write books as authors, our job is to move our audience, right? So if you imagine your audience on a fence and your job is to move them, and sometimes they're going to move on the side of the fence that you're not on. And that's okay, because your job is not to convince them to think just like you. Your job is to help them decide how they feel about something. And maybe they're going to feel differently about it, but that's okay. At least they're doing it. And in the meantime, they read your book. So, it's okay to kind of be a little bit controversial, because you can get great results with that. And I'm not saying to like go pick fights and things like that, but the reason I made the Z List, or one of the reasons anyway, was to provide a platform where people who did not have websites or did not have press kits had to create a digital profile, a digital press kit, so that they could send out a link that has their own URL and has their own QR code that they can send out that have the parts of a press kit, because that's just a tool I feel really strongly that authors need to have. And they go through these trainings and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. But this is really easy. This is just filling in the information. This isn't and there's templates on how to do all of these things, doing the positioning and the sound bites and, the press kit pieces and all of that. That's in a library. And I am going to show you. Are you on that screen? Let's see. I'm going to go into a profile so that you can see what the back end looks like. Can you see it? It says my dashboard.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so if you go to the Zebra Inc., you would find this profile in the Z-List directory, member directory, but this is how you would complete it. So I want you to see how easy it is. So first thing you would do is do your basic information. And that is what type of listing it is, which if we'll say personal. Okay. So you're an independent author. There's also, if you're an author in progress, if you are a bookstore, if you're a publishing provider, right? You put your name, your address, all the things. I didn't. I took out the address part. I have this really big fear of people knowing. Most business people at this point in the game are working from home. And I don't want anybody to find their home because of this website, right? Like if you want to put that on your Google My Business or whatever, that's on you. But I don't want anybody to find where somebody else lives because of the information they found on this website. So I disabled all of the address pieces. But you can put your company name, your position. You could put a short description of yourself. You can put where you're located, but it doesn't come up on the maps. Then you can enter your own website if you have your own website. And then if you have a calendar link, and then all of your different socials. Okay. And then, so we'll just put this and this so I can keep going. All right. Are you with me? Do you still see it?
Yeah, Sheila, we can see it.
Okay. Because I can't see you anymore, so I can't tell if you can see it or not. Sorry about that. So you can put your profile picture and you can put your logo. You can also put a cover photo. So, and I'll show you what a directory looks like, or a directory listing looks like, but you can do whatever you want. That's great real estate on your cover photo. You can brand it to the hilt. You can put a call to action. You can do all of the things, right? So that's totally up to you. So your photo goes in there, your logo, if you have one, all of that. So it's completely branded to you. Then there is all of these different specialties that you can have, right? And so you can, let's say you're a mystery writer, right? So the main category is independent author, and you're a mystery writer. So you're going to put that down. But then if you're also like a photographer, if you also are a coach, if you also are a marketing person, you can also put all of those things in there as well, because that's all searchable on the website. You can upload a biography, a brochure, a CV, documents, whatever you want. You can put your personal quote. You can put your information as far as your business information if you want to. This is where you go. This is your credentials. Where did you graduate? Did you graduate? Did you go through any training programs? All of those kinds of things. Then honors and awards, your media publications, then your interview questions, then your fun facts. I'm also going to include, I haven't put it up yet, but I will, your keynote topics, because I absolutely want you to be able to use this as a tool to send to meeting planners, to send to people who are calling for speakers, things like that. So then all of that can be there, and you can actually hyperlink your speaker sheets for each one of the topics that you talk on your keynotes in your profile. Okay. So, and then if there's anything else that you want to write, you get to do that. Okay. So you certainly that's available to you. Now you can also put up website articles that will go up on the website, or you can do community articles, which will go up it'll just show up on your profile and be available on your profile. So you'll have another tab. You can do a photo album. You can sell your book, and you can sell it right off the website. You can, or a program, the product doesn't have to be a book. It can be a program. It can be a course. It can be an event, whatever you want. You just have to have a URL. I do not process any payment. So you have to have an outside payment source. So it'll go right to you, but it goes there. And if it is an event, I think on this one in the Z list, they're not allowed to publish events, but they are as publishing providers, service providers, and in the self-publishing roadmap membership. But the events will go up on the homepage in the event calendar. You can put videos up. So all of those things are definitely something that you can take advantage of. Super easy. And then I'll show you. Can you see me? I can't see you. You left me. Okay, there we go. Does anybody have any questions about that?
How do we get there? How do we sign up for the Z list?
So you would go to the Z list, and there is a Join Today tab that I can show you.
I put the link in the chat, guys.
Perfect. And let's see, Join Today. It looks like this. And you can see Juliet is a publishing provider. She gets an ad on our website. Okay, so then there's the Z list, which is only $21 a year, and that's all the things that come with it. Then there's your publishing provider and membership, and that is what comes in it. And then there's this self-publishing author level, which is for authors looking to self-publish, and I have a back end that has a page just for them, which has all kinds of templates and things like that on there. We have monthly meetings and things like that. So it's a little bit of a more robust membership. And so there's that. So you can go here, you can sign up and get to be a part of the Z-List so that you can then send out your URL at the top when your page comes up, and then your QR code if you want to put it on your print materials. And it just makes it easy. It's a super easy way for you to send your press kit out to all your people. Okay, my friends, I think we've covered it all.
Yes. And you guys, I'm going to tell you why this is so important from a host standpoint. I used to have many years ago, I had a podcast before the one I have now called Ask Juliet, and it was about publishing. And I used to highlight new authors, and it drove me crazy. I actually stopped the podcast after about a year because all I got were piecemeal. Oh yeah, I'd love to be on your show. Here's my headshot 3 days later. Here's my bio that I didn't have written before. And it just drove me crazy. So now I actually have a form that you have to fill out to be on my podcast, unless you're one of my clients and you've been invited and I already have your stuff, where you're going to put all that in. So if you were filling out my form, you would just cut and paste right out of Sheila's and then go book. But a host will drop you. And the problem that you have if a host drops you is that we all talk to the other hosts, because we're always looking for good guests. So I might call the host of another show and say, and if I do this with Tracy Hazard all the time, hey, I heard so-and-so on your show. Do you think they'd be a good guest for mine? And she'll tell me, oh yeah, or, oh my God, don't bother because this is what happened. So just know that's why you have to have it organized and together, because we are a chatty, clicky little bunch. And the opportunity, we will down you.
Well, and one of my favorite stories to tell about press kits is that I was teaching this class, 10 years ago. And it was for entrepreneurs. It wasn't for authors. I wasn't in the publishing space at that point. I was the confidence coach and I did Marketing Mondays and I had these classes that I give and I was talking about press kits. And there was this one woman in the group and she had a business that was helping college kid or high school seniors get into college. So she was like a college admissions advisor or whatever. So she just looked at me and she's like, I don't need any of that. I'm an entrepreneur. Nobody's going to be calling me. I don't need this. This is ridiculous. So I was like, all right, rock on. You do you. I'm just telling you that also what we put energy into expands. And if we're putting in the time and energy to putting in a press kit, we're going to need it. You're going to have instances that are going to come up where you're going to use it. So about 4 days later, she calls me and she goes, you cursed me. And I go, excuse me? She said, Sheila, she said, I got home from that class. She said, and I got an email from the newspaper and they wanted to quote me. They were doing a story on college admissions and things like that. And they wanted to quote me and they needed a headshot and they needed a bio and they needed for their byline and, like the whole thing. And she goes, and I had nothing to give them. She goes, I didn't have a headshot. She goes, can I give you a couple days? They're like, well, we're trying to write this today. And she's like, I don't have all that stuff. So she scrambled. She went some place like that afternoon, had a friend take a headshot of her, and she scrambled to put together a bio for, them to have that. And she goes, as soon as that was all done, she goes, I sat down and I put together this stupid press kit because I obviously needed it. She goes, I will never doubt you again. So I'm just saying, y'all, it's worth having. And the other part of it is that you need to keep it updated. So as you are on more media, you need to put it on there. As you are publishing a new book, as you, whatever it is that you're doing that's new or different, you need to update and make sure that you've got all that material on there. So anyway, that's a cautionary tale. My friend, woman that did that, the entrepreneur that did that, she and I still laugh about that today. She's like, "Do you remember?" And I'm like, "Yes, I tell your story all the time." Because it definitely matters.
It does. And you guys, when we do the intake for publishing, I would say only about 50% of the people at intake time. And think about that. We're getting ready to publish your book. Unless you're someone who's really planned and you've been doing author platform building with us, you all of a sudden in the midst of publishing your book have to scramble to get a good headshot. So you have to go do a photo shoot right after you put out money for a publishing package. And photo shoots are not cheap these days. I think the last one I did, the shoot was $800 and the actual images were almost $2,000 when I bought them. So they don't have that. They don't have good bios. You need at least 3 bios because you want a long, short, and then the very, very short one that Sheila talked about. And then on the flip side of that, you need to be prepared to promote when that person has you on the show. Because remember that clicky host thing I told you about? Yeah. Do you know how many times I'll say, "Was she a good guest?" And they'll come back and they'll go, "She didn't promote at all." That's a taker. So be sure that you ask, "Can I get permission? Do I have your permission?" Because it is their intellectual property to use this any way I need to promote. So you might want to run it through Opus Clips. You must have a list. You got to send that interview out to your list. So is your email up and running? Do you have social media that's being consumed that you can take those Opus Clips? So make sure that you, in addition to the press kits, that you are in a position to be a great marketer as well. Because the more people see you promoting, the more opportunity somebody might say, "Oh, whoa, look, she's really promoting this podcast well. I wonder if she'd be a good guest for mine." So you might trip into, and Linda's about to learn this from the A Train to Sedona, like who's a good list and who's not. Because now I'm going to be calling her and saying, "Is that a good guest?" Any other questions? We got to wrap this up because we're
Yep.
Hour mark. So anybody have any questions before we go? Okay. So Sheila, thank you very much for being on today. You guys, everybody should be signed up for the Z list. And at that price point for a year, that is amazing. And also, don't forget next month, platformplanning.com. This is a course that I do every year for $1,500. And I'm doing it for free this year, because I know a lot of people are out there struggling with their finances. So let's get your plan for 2025 done and create a good revenue year for you as well.
I put that link in the chat as well.
Okay, fantastic.
So just click it.
The Zebra Ink as well. All right, you guys, thank you so much for showing up today, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.